Hello there. The Book of Eve, Constance Beresford-Howe. TBR, 2025. There's one down. Very short little book from Montreal. Nice Canadian writer representing the home team today. What is this book about? Eve, one day, leaves her husband. Some people might say abandons her husband, but she leaves him because he is overbearing, tight-fisted, and he's just a pain in the ass. She's been taking care of this old guy for, 30 years? And she's had enough. She goes on a bit of an adventure. She walks down to the other side of Montreal, takes a basement apartment in something like a rooming house, where she starts to make a new life for herself away from this husband who she feels that she never loved. She got married because that was what women did. They got married, they got husbands, and they got children, and that was a woman's life. And she realizes that it's all been a bit of a sham, that she didn't love this man. Went through with it because, as I say, that's what women did. It really takes on a very surprising tone because one of her principal occupations, she's an old woman, she's 65 years old and retired, and she gets this very small amount of retirement checks every couple of weeks or so. But that's not really enough for her to survive. So what she does is she walks around finding things and pawning them. It's a little bit far-fetched, but also kind of funny. And she becomes quite proficient at this. She knows the bus station is a good place to go to find things that people have left behind. And there are certain times of the day where it's good to go to the park to find things that people have left behind. And she picks it all up and she keeps it. It's quite funny because she becomes a bit of one of those characters in your neighborhood that you kind of smile when they walk past, like, oh yeah, there's the woman with the big bag of stuff that she finds. But she's not ashamed. What does hurt her, though, is that she keeps calling her son to tell him, first of all, that she's still okay. She doesn't want to tell him where she lives, but she wants him to know that she's fine. And he, of course, initially, he's worried sick about her. Where are you? Do you need any money? Is there anything I could do? Why did you run away from Dad? I know he's horrible, but don't you think you should go back? Like maybe you could take like this little holiday that you're taking right now and go back to him because he needs you. But she flatly refuses. She is not going to go back to that house, to that marriage. She's going to stay where she is, even though where she is not very good. It's like it's a shitty little ugly basement apartment with a bunch of strange people living in the house. And principally, the other main character in this household is a Hungarian who came to Canada after the 1956 revolution, and he's one of those wild East European characters who causes all kinds of turmoil. And he was a lot of fun for me because I lived in Hungary. I kept wondering how accurate the Hungarian portrayal was going to be, but because I've got some very, very specific firsthand appreciation of what it means to be Hungarian, I won't spoil the surprise. But he's a lot of fun. One of those characters who causes this fun kind of chaos in the household. He meets her and he falls in love with her, even though she's older than him. And she doesn't trust him because sometimes he drinks too much, sometimes he disappears. He gets in fights and he comes home and his face is all mashed up because he's been fighting when he was drinking. So she's trying to keep him at arm's length, but he's also too romantic to be denied for very long. It's a fun kind of a book. So let me say, my opinion is, this book is really quite light, but not bad. It's a fun, short, easy book to read. And sometimes we need that stuff, right? I read a lot of heavy stuff. But sometimes it's really nice to have something that's not too far away from being a romance novel. It's not a romance novel. This is proper literature, but it's close. If you start to think about it and you start to ask questions, we have to assume that her husband was some kind of a monster, a tyrant, because he's always described as being mean and needy because of his arthritis. But we never actually get any picture of her husband. We only get this secondhand information, how she feels about him, how their son feels about the father. So we might wonder, like, is this narrator really being honest with us? Like, is this a trustworthy narrator? So that's a question. Like, how sane is this woman? Like, is she in her right mind, or is she getting a little bit, doolally with old age? Like, she spends most of her time walking around Montreal looking for things that people have dropped or forgotten, and hopefully she can pawn them so that maybe she could buy maybe a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of sherry, have a little celebration. Like, oh, today I found a very expensive umbrella and I was able to pawn that immediately and I got $3, so I was able to buy a bottle of whiskey. How did they buy whiskey for $3? I don't know. But she does. It's fun. It's a nice one, but it's not a very deep novel. It's okay. Like, I think it's fine as short as it is. 191 pages, no problem. It's not going to be anyone's favorite novel ever, anywhere. But I was still happy to read it. I just want to read this one paragraph because it's an old book. It was published in 1973. She takes a little shot at popular culture, which is aged in kind of a funny way. Heat, like a monstrous glass bell, pressed down over the city. Everywhere, clusters of people leaned out of windows, fanned themselves on narrow balconies, or sat in the street in a surprised-looking assortment of chairs, always together, never anyone alone. Vaguely thinking an air-cooled movie might be a good idea, I trudged in the blaze up the hill to St. Catherine Street. Johnny, the Hungarian, had been buying all the food for quite a while, so I actually had folding money left over from last month's check and could well afford the ticket. But all the local theatre had to offer was some horribly amplified slop called The Sound of Music, gushing out of the swing doors. No thanks. I've had enough of that kind of thing. She called The Sound of Music that slop. Really good. There's a lot better Canadian writer. One of the reasons I started the channel was because I wanted to highlight Canadian literature, and that is not a prime example by any means. Sometimes when I read something like that, I wonder about the line between literature and, just all the popular stuff. It's okay, but I still wanted to make a video of it anyway. In spite of the fact that I don't think it's incredible, it was still fun. There was enough good stuff in it that I was happy to read it. And yeah, and that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Take care.